WJKS.
The following is a presentation of 17 First Coast News.
Racial tension is heating up here in Jacksonville. From the Judge John Santora controversy to minority set-asides, the concern is growing at an alarming rate. How many city leaders had their eyes in the trial of a white supremacist accused of murdering a black Mayport sailor? There's fears that an acquittal will lead to unrest. And what is being done to ease this growing tension? We'll attempt to answer that question and more next on Face Off. Good evening and welcome to Face Off. I'm Glen Fisher. Richard Rose is on assignment this week. The issue of race relations is heating up and tensions are mounting. If statistics could talk, they would tell us we have a serious problem with racism. A recent survey conducted by the Jacksonville Chamber of Commerce shows 63% of those questioned believe it is a serious problem here. That's up from 28% just 8 years ago. What is the reason for this mounting tension and how can we resolve it? Those are just a few of the many questions we hope to answer tonight. But first, more than 150 concerned citizens met last week for a public forum in front of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. Our Pete Christensen was there and has this report.
Obviously, racial tensions is a hot issue here in Jacksonville.
There was mumbling and grumbling from the start. Many of the crowd who wanted to speak out couldn't. In fact, almost half of this crowd was shut out from the overcrowded meeting. When it was moved to a larger room, the discontentment followed. One by one, community leaders gave their testimony. Often angry and sometimes tearful, it was almost always similar. They spoke of widespread racism here in Jacksonville and a frustration that is growing to dangerous levels.
We are possibly setting on a powder keg, and Los Angeles may move itself to the East Coast, particularly to our little state of Florida.
Speakers told the panel that racism is alive and well in Jacksonville, in schools, in businesses, and even in city and county governments. Almost every speaker mentioned the building tension, and one offered a frightening warning.
We survived Santora without any incident. We survived the set-aside with no incident. But I'm concerned that if this trial that's on right now is low, if he gets off and gets by without being convicted for killing an unarmed black man, this city may go up in smoke.
The job of the panel is now to defuse the time bomb, which has apparently been ticking, with too few people even noticing. With photographer Ken Thomas, Pete Christensen, 17 First Coast News.
Now that commission will assemble their findings in a report to be released early next year. Joining us now to discuss the issue of race relations is the Reverend John Newman. He's a member of the group Jacksonville Together, a group that was formed by the mayor to address racism and prejudices in our community. Next to him, Ronnie Ferguson. He's deputy mayor here in Jacksonville and should be able to shed some light on the government's role in race relations. He is also the former president of the local urban league, so he is very knowledgeable on the topic. Possibly go up in smoke. Pretty strong statement, but apparently after listening to that and some other things that we've been running on the news, the situation in Jacksonville has become a lot more tense than it was, let's just say, 6 months ago.
Without question, and I don't think that I'm embellishing or exaggerating or speaking hyperbolically, I think it's true that the tensions are mounting at an exponential rate. And if something is not done that is substantive, not just symbolic, but substantive soon, I'm afraid that voices of moderation will not be heard.
When we make statements like that, Reverend Newman, are we maybe planting a seed before it's time?
Absolutely not. That's telling the truth. And we have to be willing to listen to the heartbeat and the pulse of where people are. There are people saying enough is enough. And again, voices of moderation are not going to be heard. I'm afraid that the tension in this city has gotten to the point where people are so frustrated and so angry that they don't know what else to do. They feel betrayed by the mayor's veto. They feel hurt by the racial tension that stimulated a lot of hurt and pain from John Santora. And it goes back a number of years. Those tears that you saw some people shedding are tears out of frustration from years, decades in this town. And at some point, there's a kindling point and a boiling point, and I think we're just about there.
I thought that we were at a point in the last 2 or 3 years with help from the city, some of the things that we did during the Los Angeles riots the city did that brought people together. that maybe we were getting to a point where we were getting over that and at a point of understanding, but apparently we're not there yet.
Oh, I think we're at a point where we've got here because we've done things to ease tensions, but at the same time, while we're easing tensions for some, tensions will continue to mount for others. We've got factual information that shows, the Chamber of Commerce study, a number of other studies around the city that show that racial tension has been on the rise for the past 5 years or so. People are beginning to talk about racial relations, they're beginning to talk again about cultural diversity, but beginning to talk about it is not solving the problem for people who've lived under it and with it for years. One of the things I think we need to start with is the recession itself. We've often warned that during a recession, and Jacksonville did suffer its share, the black community suffers worst and most. I live in a working class neighborhood, if you will. The homes in my neighborhood are not expensive. They're $40,000 to $50,000 range or so. And I've seen too many families move out of my neighborhood, lose their homes, have to go someplace and rent, simply because work was not available. Now, these were people who were working every day, people who were proud, people who were doing what America said you're supposed to do. I watched their faces, I talked to them, and they were angry. They took it personally, and their personal feeling was, no matter what you say to me, the system has not worked for me. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm angry. When I go home, I pass too many of my young friends, 16, 17, 18-year-olds on the corner. Most of them can't get a job, and they realize that. They realize that whether it's their fault, in part, or the educational system's fault, that they don't have an education good enough to be competitive in today's market. They don't have the skills that are needed to make more than the minimum wage jobs that are available to them. And many have elected to take another path, and that's why we see such a rise in teen crime. When fathers can't bring home paychecks, when mothers can't find a way to get food on the table, when young teens can't go to school or drop out from school and work, you've got tensions that are there and that are real. When you add to that, the Santora issue, then while that was going on, we watched the whole Rodney King thing unfold. The set-aside has become symbolic, and while we're all trying to work on a amicable solution to this, it's become symbolic of, here we go one more time again, it's not right. Anything, it could be the trial, but anything could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. We're afraid of that. We've done work to try to ameliorate and keep this community moving together. And I believe still that you can only get there by working together. But there are a lot of people who are telling me, no, you're wrong, and we're not going to work that way anymore.
Let's take the set-aside program. That's the thing now that really is in the forefront and that has really caused some very hard feelings in the black community. It's caused some hard feelings in our city council, between our mayor, people and his staff. Go back and tell me what the set-aside program was and what the mayor is offering now, and then we'll talk about what the black community thinks it ought to be.
At some point in the Godbold administration, the city passed a set-aside ordinance which gave basically 10% for blacks and females, white females, to do portions of the city business. The terrible statistic is that before the set-aside program was implemented, blacks and females were doing less than 1/10 of 1% of the city's business. The program operated for roughly 4 or 5 years. It stopped in about 90, I think, as a result of the close enrichment decision. And we've spent 2 years doing a disparity study and developing a plan that was put before City Council.
Minorities got 10% on the way that was set up?
No, the number was 10%. It was a joint number. During the life of the program, blacks got roughly half of that, white females got roughly the other half of that, 10%. But you did begin to see a move of blacks beginning to do business with the city, beginning to get portions of the city contract. You know, all of us would like to see the marketplace work in a very natural way. But an interesting thing happened. As soon as the set-aside program was put on hold, was disbanded because of the Supreme Court decision, blacks and women went right back down to less than 1% of city businesses. To date, in major contracts, we've given one black contract, and that was to a black female, and it wasn't that big a contract. But, so people say there's got to be a remedy. We want to see a remedy now.
Okay, and what we're looking at now that Councilman Jones, the council president, is a quota type system. Is that correct?
No. No, I don't believe it is a quota type system.
That's what it's been referred to.
Well, it's been referred to because that's a nice buzzword for people to catch and then to feel emotionally about that issue, that it is a quota. It's not a quota bill. The word doesn't even appear in the bill. And basically what the guidelines of the bill ask for are particular goals, not quotas, but goals. And the timetables are set forth. Not only that, but the disparity study, which cost the city $400 and some odd thousand, gave suggestions for numbers that you had to be pretty close to. If it's too highly inflated, my understanding is that you can be sued for having numbers that are not realistic. And the hypocrisy of the whole problem of this situation that happened in the Godbolt administration is that my understanding is that the Association of General Contractors came to the table and negotiated part of that, or an understanding, came away from the table with an understanding on this set-aside bill. Then they, after agreeing to the bill in '89, take the same bill they agreed to court. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
Took the same bill they agreed to at the table to court, which dried up the money. They knew that by drying it up, or by tying it up rather, hundreds of millions of dollars of contracts were going to be awarded, and no African Americans were going to, or women, would be able to get a part of that money. And that's exactly what Ronnie's talking about. The actual statistics say that 0.75% of the city contracts went to African Americans and women after the bill was tied up. People say, well, and some of my friends, associates say, well, black businesses should not depend upon government contract. That's welfare. What about Northrop? What about GE? What about Meta? What about other big multinational conglomerates that would die for not government contract? H. Ross Perot made most of his money on government contracts.
Right.
That's not welfare.
We're going to take a couple steps further because we're halfway to where I wanted to get on this, and we will as soon as we come back. Welcome back. We're talking minority set-aside program and the various programs that are now on the table. I heard today that, and I just came out of a meeting, that Jim Piggott got to look at the mayor's plan now, and it's awarded on a point system.
Right.
And the point system is something like that if you're a black contractor, and let's say you have 50 employees, only 25 are black, then you'd get so many points. If a white contractor has 50 employees, and yet, let's just say 30 of those 50 are black, he would get more points. It seems to me that, I don't know what the inequity is in that, or the fairness in that is, but I don't know how you add up fairness in that. Do you agree with that plan? And if you do,
let's talk about the fundamental differences in the two approaches. The mayor fundamentally objected to setting aside a pot of money that only blacks and or women could access. Okay. He felt that created some tensions in the community. It created tensions that led to the Association of General Contractors veto taking the other plan to court, and the kind of decisions that we got out of the close enrichment issue. He said, and he feels, that if you have a pool of money that everyone can access, so whether you're black, white, male, female, doesn't matter, everyone can access, but you score and you award contracts based on people meeting certain criteria. There's a whole slew of criteria, the ones you mentioned, just a couple of them. And the criteria aimed at having an impact on black entrepreneurship, number one, black subcontracting, number two, black employment, number three, and impact on the local target area, number four. If you have something that can weave that into the process, then you have a situation that says, well, you can't say it's not fair because everyone can apply. It's judged against certain criteria. The criteria may not be to everybody's liking, but it does promote minority business development and minority business ownership. I do like that. Let me tell you what we've done now, because after the veto, and I certainly feel the pain that this whole community felt with the veto. I mean, if I had my way, we would have not had a Warren Jones plan or Mayor Ed Austin's plan, we would have a Councilman Jones and a Mayor Ed Austin's plan coming together and them standing side by side saying, we agree and we've got to move this community forward, because I think that's the only way it's going to work for both sides. The issue of, how this will work, whether it's fair, I think what we've done, because before the veto, there was a concept. It was not a fully developed plan. Since then, we have taken the best of both concepts, and I think merged them into one. I know Councilman Jones and some other people are looking at it now. They may agree with it. They may still disagree. I don't know. But I think we've got to have some discussion. The point for me is not whether I disagree or agree, but how do we move forward and get something done that satisfies the needs of this community?
You've been chomping at the bit.
Yes, I have. Here are some of the problems I find inherent in that. First of all, Ronnie says, and this understanding, Ron and I are friends, all right, and that needs to be understood, but we differ sometimes on positions and issues. The mayor is against setting aside a pool of money that only African Americans and women can access. And in his system, everybody can access it. But that's only true in theory. Some of the sizes and largesse of these contracts, black and women businesses are not big enough to even bid on them. So in reality, that's not true.
John, that's the beauty of it, because in that scenario, there are certain contracts that we cannot break down into small enough chunks that a minority business by itself could handle. An example might be a state road contract where you have $6-7 million worth of road projects. I don't know of a minority firm in Jacksonville that could handle that, a black firm in Jacksonville that can handle that. What his plan does, what his idea does, what this matrix does, and it could work in either concept. That's why we were able to merge the two. What it does is say, well, Mr. Majority Contractor, you're in competition not with blacks in this situation, but with other majority contractors. And you will be judged not just according to the strength of your proposal, but also according to how you meet those impact criteria. So it's in your best interest to hire minority subs, minority professional engineers, and whatever else is out there, as well as minority laborers, because whoever has that best plan has the best chance of getting that award.
Well, here's the problem with that, right?
Well, it also allows, on the smaller contracts, where minority business person, a black business person, a female business person can handle the job on their own, to be awarded the most points if they come in as a minority business with their minority subs and their minority employees.
Here's the problem inherent in that, and I hear some of the contractors saying, and I happen to agree with them, that it smacks of a certain kind of paternalism, that it's a plantation, the boss is in control of the plantation mentality, in which the majority contractor says, well, I've got my set of black folks I want to hire, and I'll bring in.
John, I agree with you.
So it's favoritism.
Well,
and I'm saying that is a legitimate concern.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Okay.
I agree with you that the press at first labeled this thing in such a way that I too said, hey, it smacks of paternalism.
So, but he's saying in a way that it may work, though. Is that what you're saying? You feel that if you can come together on both sides, that this plan may work?
I'm not so sure.
Let me finish my point.
Go ahead.
The point is that John is absolutely right. There are big contracts that a minority contractor, a minority operator, a female operator would not be able to bid for on their own. But there are hundreds and hundreds of other contracts that are small enough that this criteria would be applied towards, so where they can be the general person in charge of that thing. On the large contracts, we do something here. Now, you've got a choice.
Hold the thought. And we've got to take a break because we're running behind in time. But hold that thought, and we'll come back and finish it. We'll be back in just a minute. And welcome back. And Mr. Ferguson, you're in the middle of...
I just want to finish that point.
Go ahead.
To this date, this city has shown a poor history of majority contractors working with black subs and black professionals on major work. This process will, one, allow blacks and females to do jobs on their own, where they have the size and ability to do that. But it also tells white contractors that if you're going to play in this ball game, you've got to learn to do business with blacks and women, period. So I think it opens up a market that has not been opened before, and that's the strength of this idea.
The other powder keg that we're looking at, obviously, in the city is the trial of George Loeb, the admitted avowed white supremacist who is charged with killing a black Mayport sailor, Harold Mansfield. A lot of people, including yourself, feel that we are sitting on a powder keg. My question to you is, has the black community already prejudged this man, and if they don't get exactly what they want, and that is, in other words, if he gets acquitted, are we really looking at trouble, and have they actually prejudged this trial?
I think so. If we really want to be honest about it, I think so. I think that particularly in light of the early testimony that Harry Shorstein has put on the witness stand, and it's corroborated that the man had dropped the brick and was backing up. He had made a negative statement. I'll bust your, expletive deleted head in with this brick, but you're not worth it. He dropped the brick and then he shot. I do think, in light of other things that have happened in this town where black males have been killed and it seemingly justice was not done, that the African American community is pretty much, I think, unified in its perception that this man is guilty.
But that doesn't speak well for the way the judicial system is set up. If they've already, in other words, what they're doing is they're already judging him before he's tried.
Well, in the African American community, a lot of times people feel that we're judged before we're tried. Not that, one wrong makes another thing correct. I do think, in answering your question, that most of the people in the community feel that the man is guilty. And I think they have a right to feel that way. I think that all the evidence should, of course, be put on the table, but I do think that if you want to know how the black community feels, and no one person speaks for them, but I think that, in my opinion, that most people think the man's guilty.
All right, we've only got 30 seconds left. Just both of you tell me what we can do to prevent anything like this from happening.
I think that what has to happen is that we have to remember that what we want is what's best for the community. If the marriage between Warren's bill and Mayor Ed Austin's bill is what actually is, after the numbers are crunched and after the legal opinion is rendered and no games are being played, if it is a better bill, if a hybrid can come together, then I think that cool minds and sound minds must prevail. But we've got to do what's best and no more games.
Well, we hope so. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We're out of time. Good night.